So, this weekend, on Sunday, the official TikTok ban comes into play. Are you ready for it? Unfortunately, some Americans, in a dramatic act of defiance or protest or solidarity or whatever you call it, are jumping over to a Chinese app called Xiaohongshu, which translates to something like Rednote or Little Red Book or something like that. Anyway, is that a good idea? In this podcast, I'm going to talk about it.
Did you know that 99% of you aren't subscribed? Why? Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and follow me.
Hey everybody, so I wanted to, I'm out walking the dog right now, but I wanted to share some thoughts I had on this upcoming TikTok ban. I've talked about it before in another podcast, but had some new thoughts. First of all, it's Thursday right now, and they're saying that on Sunday it's going to be banned in the States. What ban actually mean is not clear. Basically, from what I understand, it means it's not going to be available for download again. Possibly they will redirect you if you try to open the app on your phone. I don't know. Seen a lot of people who live in other countries where TikTok is banned, and they basically just use a VPN and they can get in. So I don't think it's going to be this 100% total blocking you of the application. I think it's basically just going to be a limiting process. And again, I'm under the feeling, at least my gut feeling is saying, and it seems to be signs happening in the news right now, what I'm reading is that actually they're going to do an extension on the ban anyway. So it might not even happen, actually. It's a lot of just posturing at the point. So I don't think it's going to happen. If it does, my gut feeling is that it probably won't last long, because I think if Trump gets in office, probably very quickly, he'll probably take care of that anyway. Who knows? It could be a permanent thing, but again, I don't think it's going to happen. But I think that regardless of whether it happens or not, and I've spoken about this before, if you are using TikTok as a business, then you should, and this is like marketing 101 kind of stuff, that if you don't know this already, this is a wake-up call. You should not be relying on one platform as your sole way of communicating with potential customers or fans or followers or whatever, however you define the people that purchase your stuff or buy your music or, listen to you or follow you, whatever. You should diversify, so you should be using other platforms. I think TikTok is pretty cool. I like it a lot. It has probably the best engagement of any social platform I've used so far. So I understand why people like it, why people use it. I understand why people have lots of followers on there, because it's really easy to reach a huge audience. But if that's your sole purpose, your sole platform for connecting with whatever you do to generate income, you got to diversify. You have to be using the platform to drive people to another place where you actually control the communication to your customers. So get people on your mailing list, get people to go to even just a link tree to get all the other platforms that you're on, so that you diversify and scatter that out. And maybe it's not as completely effective not to have one particular very high following channel, but trust me, I've been through this a lot in a lot of different businesses and a lot of different clients that I've consulted, and you really need to diversify. And email is old school, but it is literally the best way to ensure that you can communicate with your fans and your customers. Get people on a newsletter, because the people who are on a newsletter are way more primed to engage with you and buy your stuff and follow you and listen to whatever you're influencing about, than somebody who just casually follows you. And like I said, a good percentage of the people quote unquote who follow you on these platforms are bots anyway. They're fake accounts, or they're people just using your account to steal traffic to get to their account. So there's so many shady ways that people use on social media, and so many shady bot farms and follower farms and businesses that rely on purely that as a business model, that there's such a huge percentage of people that are following you anyway on these platforms, especially TikTok, that aren't even real people. So diversify and try not to worry so much that TikTok is going away, probably just temporarily, even if it does. So that's that. I've talked about this before, but again, it's really, I can't drive that home more to get into your sort of best practices for however you run your business or your band or whatever. Second, when it comes to TikTok, honestly, I like I said, I enjoy TikTok, but I really just don't care. I take TikTok with a grain of salt because it is true. TikTok is under the control of the Chinese Communist Party. So regardless of whatever they say, whatever the business structure is, regardless of what you feel about this in terms of your politics, this platform is under government control of the Chinese Communist Party, which means they have their own objectives for why they are using this. And basically, even if you remove politics out of this, this is a country that you have, in the West, you really have no legal discourse of what happens to your account or your data, really. I mean, they say you do, but for the most part, you don't. And I'm saying this from having been a musician and an artist. I did digital art before, and I've posted a lot of my art online, and I've seen my art. I've uploaded to platforms where I do print on demand and stuff like that, and there's only so much sort of copyright protection that you have when you start putting your stuff online. You can track people down who steal your stuff and try to sue them or tell them to stop using your stuff, but for the most part, it's pretty limited. But I've taken some of my artwork and I put it into Google image search, and I have seen platforms in China and Russia that have taken my stuff and sold it on various products and things, and had more success selling them on their platforms than I have on my own stuff. And my ability to be able to contact these platforms and say, you can't sell my stuff, that's mine, is zero. There's like zero discourse that you have when you're trying to control what happens in China and Russia and some of these other countries, which leads me to believe that I've never trusted TikTok. I mean, I just don't. I take it with a grain of salt. It's great being able to use it, but for the most part, if it goes away, I actually don't care. And to be quite honest, because of those reasons, I don't mind if it does go away. Like I said, I don't think it's going to, but if it does, I don't care if it goes away, because I literally just don't trust doing business with these types of platforms. So, say what you want about Meta platforms or X or whatever, you know what I mean? And all these new platforms that are coming up, Blue Sky and all that stuff. Say what you want about them, regardless of your politics or regardless of whatever. But they are Western-based platforms, and there's Western-based legal discourse should something happen on there. And so at least you have a Western legal system to be able to go through, a process to go through to if you have some sort of grievance or you have some sort of violation or whatever that you need to contest, at least you have the ability to do that. In China you don't. With TikTok you really don't. It doesn't matter if they have a Western based part of their company, but for the most part you don't. And there are basically, Chinese Communist Party based agendas that they use to run the platform. So that is opposed to Western based agendas. So there is, there's a conflict of interest right out of the gate when you use these platforms. And especially things like TikTok. I'm going to talk about another Chinese platform that people are going to in a minute. But for the most part, you have no discourse, and the agenda is basically opposed to Western agenda. So, I mean, a little bit of a rant, but for the most part, I honestly don't. I don't trust TikTok. I never have trust TikTok, and I've taken it with a grain of salt. And if it goes away, I honestly don't care. Do I like using Meta products more? No, not really. But I'm much more confident using Meta products or X or whatever than I am TikTok. And that leads me to another topic, is that I'm seeing a lot of people, especially just this week, because of the whole TikTok situation, they're going over to a Chinese app called Xiaohongshu. It's basically like a TikTok copy. It's Chinese only, basically. The app is in Chinese. They do have an English translation version of it now, but a lot of people are going over there just sort of out of protest because of this whole TikTok thing. A lot of Americans, and it's pretty crazy what's happening right now, because the platform is basically it's been around for a while. I don't know how long it's been around, but like I said, it's a Chinese platform, Chinese user base, Chinese language based, and there are people on there, Chinese, who are using it for business. They are doing the same kind of thing everybody does with TikTok or Instagram or whatever. They're doing influencer-based business. There's some shops and things, but for the most part, it is a Chinese-based business process. And so there's a ton of Americans going over there right now, basically flooding the platform with English language-based content, and it's basically overloading the platform because it wasn't the infrastructure wasn't made to handle American language, English language, as well as any kind of business model for American-based business for the most part. So because of this, two things are happening. One, Americans are going over there thinking like sort of this sort of narcissistic virtual signaling in protest to TikTok to say, well, I'm going to go over to a Chinese-controlled platform. If the government doesn't want us on their Chinese-controlled platform, I'm going to a full-on Chinese-controlled platform and do it out of protest, thinking that they're going to have the same experience that they do on TikTok. One, the language is not really accepting of English. I mean, people, are sort of welcoming some, Americans on there and saying, yeah, welcome here. But for the most part, it's a Chinese-based sort of culture on the platform. And so if you don't speak Chinese, it's not really the best place to do influencer marketing that we've been doing for the most part in the West here on the other platforms. So one, the Chinese language is a barrier. It's also limiting the types of things that you can and can't say, because it's the actual community guidelines are way more strict. It kind of reminds me of the Stephen King movie Creepshow in the 80s, where there's a series of sort of short stories in the movie, and there's one story in there, I forget what it was called, but basically it's this woman is driving out in the middle of nowhere and her car breaks down, and so she walks up to this house and this kid answers the door, and she gets invited in, and basically all the people in this house are basically, I don't know if they're relatives or if they're just other people that came to the house because their car broke down or whatever. But for the most part, all these people are basically afraid of this kid and basically doing every single thing that the kid says to do, because it turns out that this kid basically, it's an old movie, so I'll spoil it. But anyway, this kid basically can get anything he wishes for. And so for the most part, he's basically just torturing these people to do everything he wants, because he's going to, and if they don't do what he says, he does all this mean stuff to them with his wishes. And so for the most part, these people basically are living their lives in this house, just like appeasing this child, and just sort of not really being themselves, obviously. And it's kind of the feeling I get when I go over to this platform. I went over there just to I signed up and looked around. Definitely will not be using this platform, but I just wanted to check it out and see what the big deal was about. And it's very Chinese, and it's it should be, because that's their culture, that's how they do that. But also, Chinese platforms are controlled and governed by Chinese Communist Party agendas, which means there are certain things you can and can't say, especially when it comes to politics and stuff. And so the content there is very, very light, And you have this feeling like everybody's acting like these people did in this house with this kid who could get anything he wished for. They're all being very careful about what they say and what they do because they don't want to get their account blocked. And in China, I'm sorry to say, but if you say and do the wrong thing, you can disappear. That's the reality of what life is in China, regardless of all the freedoms that we take for granted here, all the complaining that you can do. But, people in China are not as free. They're not as free to say and do whatever they want, especially on social media, especially a Chinese-controlled social media platform. So if, these Westerners who are going over there, especially Americans, and just this sort of narcissistic virtual signaling over there, just saying, I'm protesting my government, they're going to go over to this little Redbook app and try to do the same shit they've been doing on social media over here in America. They can't do it. And people are getting violations left and right because they're trying to do the same thing, but they can't because it's a totally different culture. Not to mention it's all Chinese. So if you don't speak Chinese and you don't respect Chinese culture and the culture that goes on these platforms, then it's not going to help you at all. And not to mention, there's nothing you can do to monetize right now because all the business is run through Chinese-based business structures. So it's not even set up right now to use their shop unless you have some sort of Chinese related business connectivity. So there's no Western-based banking control over any of the shops or any of the monetization. So other than just basic influencer marketing to a primarily Chinese-based customer base, there's not much you can do there anyway. So, and getting down to the basics, I mean, I don't use any social media platform if I can't just put a link in my bio. You know what I mean? And granted, it's sort of passé to have link in bio, but literally, like, if I can't use social media to drive traffic to all my other stuff, I'm not going to use it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't have millions of followers to be able to say, hey, look at this thing, buy it, and have a brand pay me for it. I mean, I've done some brand related promotion, but for the most part, I need links. Link in bio or some of the platforms where I can post links to news stories or blog posts or whatever. But it's pretty much not effective. So there's no reason for me to use this kind of platform, even if it was Western based. I wouldn't use it. It doesn't make any sense to me. So anyway, if you're an American, you're thinking you're going to have the same experience. It's not the same experience, and you really shouldn't expect to go over there and do that. And this also leads to another topic, which is a lot more serious. I have been seeing a few news stories by some sort of Chinese people of Chinese descent who are, either American or they came over here from China and they either do business still in China or they have family in China that they communicate through. Little Red Book is actually one of the only apps available in the West and in China where there is no sort of firewall in between the communication. So, TikTok, for example, in TikTok, TikTok is a Western-based app using only Western-based users. There are no actual Chinese-based users because they have their own separate platform over there. So you're not actually communicating with actual Chinese-based people in TikTok. It's a completely separate, walled-off environment. And Little Red Book is actually different because people who are using Little Red Book in China and using Little Red Book in America can actually share the same content. And so it's one of the only places where people in China or in America who have family in China or whatever connections, they can communicate and share the same content. So it's one of the only places where they can do that, apparently. And now what's happening, unfortunately, is all these Americans are going over to Little Red Book and starting up their platform. And the Chinese Communist Party and Little Red Book, they don't like that because they don't want to have that shared content. Because obviously, China has much more. They crack down on all kinds of news stories and all kinds of things that they don't want available in China. So, that sort of walled garden effect, which wasn't there, is now starting to happen because they want to have a separation between the American-based content and the Chinese-based content. So what's happening now is they're starting to separate the IPs so that Chinese IPs see Chinese content and American IPs only see American content. And so the people who are, for example, I saw this post from this woman she's Chinese, but she lives in America, or I know she's an American, but she has Chinese family. I don't know the story, but for the most part, she was on social media, like crying, saying, it's great that you guys all want to come over and check out this new Chinese app. That's not the problem. But the problem is now the company that runs Little Red Book is blocking IPs that normally would be able to communicate. So for the most part, she's losing her ability to communicate with her family and share content and vice versa, and also conduct business. And other people in China are losing their ability to conduct business because this IP separation that's happening. So it's kind of tragic that these people that have been doing this for a while and using this platform and just engaging in whatever Chinese culture that they've been engaging in are suddenly being blocked in America, because all these Americans are going over there just because of their own, I just come out and say it's just kind of stupidity, arrogant stupidity to go over to this Chinese app and just start banging it around like cavemen banging on a rock, and kind of disrespecting the culture and saying a bunch of rude things to people and not really engaging the way they've been engaging on this app forever. And so it's this sort of, I don't know exactly if it defined as cultural appropriation, but it kind of seems like that. It's sort of this American colonization of this Chinese app and this Chinese culture app, and doing American related stuff. And I don't know, it's sad, and it's sort of rude, and honestly, it's just unnecessary, because there's no reason for Americans really to go over there and use this app unless they really want to engage in Chinese and Chinese culture. So for the most part, if you're looking for a TikTok alternative because they're banning TikTok in America, don't go to Little Red Book, because it doesn't make any sense unless you're Chinese, or unless you plan on really taking on learning Chinese and engaging in Chinese culture and engaging in the community guidelines that are required to post content on these platforms. So it doesn't make any sense, and I don't know. I would highly consider not going over to this platform if I were you. I mean, I understand. I will check out any social media platform if I think I'll get some benefit from it, or I think I'll be able to get followers, or get some backlinks to my content, or be able to promote myself. I pretty much jump on every social platform that opens up to do that. But in this case, it's not the same, because there's no real benefit of being an American and doing American related content over on this platform. Doesn't make any sense. And it's the business infrastructure is not set up to do any realistic business there anyway. So it doesn't make sense. And again, I think it's rude, and it's unfortunate for people who have been using this platform for the reasons that they use it for in China, in Chinese. So that being said, this is sort of a rant, but I just wanted to get off the top of my head before I forget all this stuff. Let me know your thoughts on this. I'm going to be watching this as it pops up, as this whole TikTok thing pops up over the weekend. Like I said, it's going to be interesting. And I just kind of remove myself from being emotionally attached to it, because, if it stays, great, I'll use it. If it doesn't, it's not going to break my heart either. So if that's the end of TikTok, so be it, whatever. But anyway, curious to hear your thoughts. Let me know. Hope you can hear this is my first sort of mobile outside podcast, or full-time podcast. I've been talking for 24 minutes here. So anyway, that's it on my side. I'm Sean Early, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.